3 hours earlier, Margaret Harrison had been sipping her morning Earl Grey in the sunroom, completely unaware that her empire was about to implode. The call came at 9:47 a.m. "Mrs. Harrison?" The voice was young, female, nervous. "This is Rebecca from Cornerstone Financial. I'm calling about the discrepancy in your account." Margaret's teacup paused halfway to her lips. "Discrepancy?" "Yes, ma'am. It appears there were 3 wire transfers last month that don't match our records of your approved transactions. Totaling, let me see, $240,000. The cup clattered against the saucer. "That's impossible," Margaret said, but her voice lacked conviction. Her mind was already racing through possibilities, through the web of financial maneuvers she'd been orchestrating for the past 6 months. "I'm required to report this to our fraud department, unless you can verify." "I'll handle it." Margaret hung up, her hand trembling. She'd been so careful, so meticulous. Every transfer, every forged signature, every doctored document had been planned with surgical precision. Her son David's trust fund, the money his father had left him, the money that should have been untouchable, had seemed like the perfect solution to her own financial crisis. David wouldn't notice. He was too busy playing house with his precious Claire, too distracted by their sickeningly perfect marriage to pay attention to quarterly statements. But someone had noticed. Margaret's mind clicked through scenarios like a chess master anticipating moves. Claire. It had to be Claire. That woman had never trusted her, never accepted her attempts at building a relationship. Always watching with those suspicious eyes, always asking too many questions about family finances. The front door opened. Footsteps in the hallway, familiar, purposeful. Margaret stood, smoothing her clothes, arranging her face into the mask of gracious matriarch she'd perfected over decades. But when Claire appeared in the doorway of the sunroom, Margaret knew immediately that this wasn't a social visit. Claire's face was pale, her jaw set. In her hand, she clutched a manila folder. "We need to talk." Claire's voice was steady, but Margaret could hear the fury underneath, coiled tight like a spring ready to snap. "Of course, dear. Would you like some tea?" "Cut the bullshit, Margaret." Claire slammed the folder onto the antique coffee table. Papers spilled out bank statements, transfer records, photocopies of signatures that weren't quite right. "I want to hear you say it. I want to hear you admit what you've been doing." Margaret's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her expression neutral. "I don't appreciate your tone." "My tone?" Claire laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "My tone? You've been embezzling from my husband's inheritance and you're worried about my tone. Those are complex financial instruments that you wouldn't understand." "Don't." Claire's finger jabbed toward her, trembling with rage. "Don't you dare patronize me. I have an MBA from Wharton. I understand exactly what these documents show. You've been systematically draining David's trust fund and funneling the money into offshore accounts." The room felt too small suddenly, the air too thick. Margaret's carefully constructed defenses were crumbling. But she wasn't about to surrender without a fight. "David is my son. That money was left to David by his father. Not to you. To David." Claire's voice rose. "You have no legal right to touch it. What you've done is theft. It's fraud. It's none of your business." Margaret's own anger finally broke through, sharp and vicious. "You married into this family 3 years ago. 3 years. I've been a Harrison for 4 decades. That money, this house, this entire legacy, it's mine by right, regardless of what some legal document says." "By right?" Claire stared at her, incredulous. "You actually believe that?" "I built this family's reputation while you were still in diapers. I maintained appearances through scandals that would have destroyed lesser families. I sacrificed." "You sacrificed nothing." Claire's shout echoed through the room. "You lived in luxury while David's father worked himself to death. You spent his money on designer clothes and country club memberships, while he was too busy building his company to notice. And now that he's gone, you think you're entitled to steal from his son?" Margaret's hand shot out before she could stop herself. The slap connected with Claire's cheek with a crack that seemed to freeze time itself. For a moment, neither woman moved. Claire's hand slowly rose to her reddening cheek, her eyes wide with shock. Then something shifted in her expression, shock crystallizing into cold, hard fury. "You're going to regret that." Claire's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more menace than any shout. "Are you threatening me?" Margaret tried to inject authority into her voice, but it came out shaky. "In my own home?" "Your home?" Claire picked up the manila folder, clutching it like a weapon. "This house is in David's name, has been since his father died. Just like the trust fund, the investment accounts, The stock portfolio, all of it belongs to David. You're just the widow who's been living off his generosity. The words hit like physical blows. Margaret had spent years pretending otherwise, had convinced herself that her position in the family was unassailable. But Claire was right. Legally, she had nothing. Everything was David's. And if David found out what she'd done, you're going to tell him. It wasn't a question. Claire's smile was bitter. Oh, I'm going to do more than that. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you are. The country club, your charity board, friends, every single person in your precious social circle, they're all going to find out that Margaret Harrison is nothing but a common thief. You wouldn't dare. But Margaret's voice lacked conviction. Watch me. Claire turned toward the door. Panic seized Margaret's chest. Wait, please. We can discuss this. There must be some arrangement. Claire spun back, her eyes blazing. Arrangement? You want to make a deal? After you've stolen from us? After you just assaulted me? I'll pay it back. Every penny. You don't need to involve David. This can stay between us. No. The word was final, absolute. This ends today. I'm calling our lawyer. I'm calling the police. And then I'm telling David exactly what kind of woman his mother is. She reached for her phone. Margaret's desperation turned to fury. You self-righteous little bitch. You think you're so much better than me? You married David for his money just like every other gold digger. I married David because I love him. Claire's voice cracked with emotion. Something you clearly know nothing about. If you had loved your husband, you wouldn't be stealing from his memory. If you loved your son, you wouldn't be destroying his future. The accusation struck deep, hitting truths Margaret had spent years burying. But she wouldn't let this woman see her break. Get out of my house. Gladly. Claire headed for the door, phone already at her ear. Hello, yes, I need to speak with Gerald Mitchum. It's Claire Harrison. It's urgent. Margaret watched her daughter-in-law walk away, heard her voice receding down the hallway, and felt the walls of her carefully constructed life closing in. In her mind, she was already calculating, planning, searching for escape routes that didn't exist. The Tiffany lamp on the console table caught her eye, the same lamp her husband had bought her on their 10th anniversary. She remembered his face when he'd given it to her, proud and hopeful, still believing in the woman he'd married. What would he think of her now? The question lasted only a moment before Margaret crushed it down. Sentiment was a luxury she couldn't afford. She needed to think, to plan, to find a way out of this disaster before it consumed everything. Her phone buzzed. A text from David. Mom, Claire just called. She's really upset. What's going on? Margaret's hands shook as she typed. Just a misunderstanding, darling. I'll explain everything. But even as she sent it, she knew there was no explanation that would save her. No story convincing enough to overcome the evidence Claire had gathered. No manipulation skillful enough to turn her son against his wife. She was trapped, cornered, facing consequences she'd convinced herself would never come. The sound of a car starting in the driveway made her flinch. Through the window, she watched Claire's Mercedes speed away, tires screeching slightly on the curve. Going to the lawyer. Going to start the process that would destroy Margaret's reputation, her social standing, possibly her freedom. Margaret's phone rang. David's name on the screen. She stared at it, watching it ring once, twice, 3 times. Her son, her only child, the boy she'd raised, the man she'd molded into the perfect heir to the Harrison legacy. What would she say to him? How could she possibly explain? The ringing stopped. Seconds later, another text. Mom, I'm coming over. We need to talk. Now. The walls were closing in faster than she'd anticipated. Margaret looked around the sunroom, the expensive furniture, the original artwork, the Persian rugs, all of it suddenly feeling like props in a play that was ending. Her entire life, built on appearances and manipulation, was about to be exposed for the hollow facade it had always been. She thought of her friends at the country club, the women she'd socialized with for decades, how quickly they would turn on her once the scandal broke, how eagerly they would devour this juicy piece of gossip, relishing her fall from grace. She thought of her position on the charity board, the respect she'd commanded, the influence she'd wielded. All of it would evaporate the moment the truth came out. And David, God, David, the look in his eyes when he learned what she'd done, the betrayal, the disappointment, the realization that his mother was not the woman he'd believed her to be. Margaret Harrison had faced many challenges in her 63 years. She'd survived her husband's death, navigated the treacherous waters of high society, maintained her position through skill and determination. But this was different. This was exposure, consequences, the kind of reckoning she'd always managed to avoid. The front door opened again. David's footsteps, hurried and heavy. Margaret forced herself to stand, to arrange her features into something resembling composure. Whatever happened next, she would face it as a Harrison. With dignity, with strength, even if it was all an act. David appeared in the doorway, his face a mixture of confusion and concern. "Mom, what the hell is going on? Claire just told me." He stopped, his eyes focusing on her cheek, still red from where she'd been slapped. "Did Claire do that to you?" His voice changed, hardening. And in that moment, Margaret saw her opportunity. A way out. A chance to twist the narrative, to play the victim, to save herself at Claire's expense. All she had to do was lie. Margaret's mouth opened, the lie ready on her tongue. But something in David's eyes stopped her, a flash of the boy he'd been, the son who'd once trusted her completely. "She didn't mean to," Margaret heard herself say, the words surprising even her. "We were arguing, and things got heated and I slapped her first." David's expression shifted from concern to confusion to something harder. "You hit Claire?" "She was accusing me of terrible things, saying I'd—" Margaret's voice caught. This was it. The moment of truth she'd been trying to avoid. "David, we need to talk. About your father's trust fund." His face went pale. "What about it?" The front door burst open before she could answer. Claire's voice rang through the house, sharp and commanding. "Gerald, they're in the sunroom." "Yes, bring the documents." David's head whipped toward the hallway. "You brought the lawyer here." Claire appeared, Gerald Mitchum trailing behind her, his briefcase already open. The family attorney looked uncomfortable, his usual genial expression replaced by professional severity. "David," Gerald nodded. "I'm sorry about this. Your wife contacted me with some very serious allegations." "Allegations?" David looked between them all, his confusion deepening. "Will someone please tell me what the hell is going on?" Claire thrust the manila folder at him. "Your mother has been stealing from you. $240,000. Maybe more." Margaret watched her son's face as he opened the folder, saw the moment comprehension dawned. His fingers trembled slightly as he flipped through the pages, bank statements, transfer records, signatures that looked like his but weren't quite right. "Mom?" His voice was barely a whisper. "I can explain. You forged my signature." He held up a transfer document, his hand shaking now. "This is my signature, but I never signed this." "I needed the money," Margaret said, hating how weak she sounded. "After your father died, there were expenses, debts he'd hidden from me." "Debts?" Claire's laugh was sharp. "Tell him the truth, Margaret. Tell him about the investment in that fraudulent real estate scheme. Tell him about the gambling." The word hung in the air like a grenade. David's eyes widened. "Gambling?" Margaret felt the room spinning. It wasn't gambling. It was investing. Atlantic City, twice a month for the past year. Claire pulled out another document, a credit card statement highlighted in yellow. The Borgata, Caesars, the Tropicana, $50,000 in cash advances in 6 months alone. "You went through my personal records?" Margaret's voice rose, desperate anger replacing calculation. "These aren't your records," Gerald interjected quietly. "These are David's accounts that you've been accessing without authorization." David sank into a chair, the folder slipping from his hands. Papers scattered across the Persian rug. "How long?" His voice was hollow. "How long have you been doing this?" Margaret couldn't look at him. 6 months. Maybe 8. Jesus Christ. David's head dropped into his hands. Claire moved to her husband's side, her hand on his shoulder. The gesture was protective, possessive. Margaret felt a stab of jealousy so sharp it took her breath away. "There's more," Gerald said, pulling another file from his briefcase. "I've been reviewing the estate documents from your father's death. Margaret, you signed as executor on several distributions that should have required court approval. I was managing the estate." "You were liquidating assets," Gerald corrected. "The vacation property in the Hamptons, sold at a loss. The stock portfolio, cashed out during a market high and the proceeds never reinvested. Your late husband's vintage car collection, gone. All of it converted to cash, and all of it, gone." David looked up, his face ashen. "How much?" Gerald hesitated. "How much?" David's voice cracked like a whip. "Approximately $1.2 million. The number fell like a bomb. Margaret saw her son's world shattering in his eyes, saw the moment he understood the full scope of her betrayal. "You destroyed everything Dad left me." David's voice was barely audible. "Everything he worked for. I didn't destroy it. I just needed—" "You needed?" David shot to his feet, his composure finally breaking. "You needed to throw away $1 million at a casino? You needed to forge my signature and steal from me? Don't you dare judge me. Margaret's own fury erupted. You have no idea what it's been like. Your father left me nothing. Nothing. Everything went into that damn trust fund for you. I was supposed to live on a pittance while you sat on millions. That pittance was $400,000 a year, Claire shouted. The allowance written into the will was more than most people make in a decade. It wasn't enough, Margaret's voice broke. To maintain this house, my position, my lifestyle, it wasn't enough. So you stole from me. David's words were quiet, devastating. From your own son. The silence that followed was suffocating. Margaret looked at David, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. The boy who'd adored her, who'd believed she could do no wrong, was gone. In his place stood a man who would never trust her again. I think, Gerald said carefully, we need to discuss next steps. David, you have several options legally. I want her arrested. Claire's voice was ice. No. David's response was immediate, automatic. Claire turned to him, incredulous. David, she stole over $1 million. She's my mother. She's a criminal. She's still my mother. David's shout echoed through the room. I can't. I won't send her to prison. Margaret felt a flicker of hope, quickly crushed by Claire's next words. Then she's choosing your mother over justice. Over us. The ultimatum was clear. David looked between his wife and his mother, trapped. That's not fair, he said weakly. Fair? Claire's eyes blazed. Your mother has been stealing from us, lying to us, manipulating us, and you're worried about what's fair. I need time to think. There's nothing to think about. Claire grabbed her purse from the side table. Either you hold her accountable, or I walk. Those are your options, David. Claire, please. She was already moving toward the door. I'll be at my sister's. You have 24 hours to decide what kind of man you want to be. The door slammed behind her. David flinched, as if physically struck. Gerald cleared his throat. I should give you two some privacy. David, call me when you're ready to discuss this further. He nodded to Margaret, his expression unreadable, and left. Father and son stood in the wreckage of their relationship, the scattered papers on the floor a physical manifestation of their shattered trust. Say something, Margaret whispered. David's laugh was bitter, broken. What do you want me to say, Mom? That it's okay? That I understand? I don't understand any of this. I made mistakes. Mistakes? David's voice rose again. Mistakes are forgetting a birthday or missing a call. This is systematic fraud. This is betrayal on a level I can't even process. I'm your mother. I raised you. That has to count for something. It does. David's eyes were wet now, tears he was fighting to hold back. It's the only reason I'm not calling the police right now. But don't mistake my hesitation for forgiveness, because I don't know if I can ever forgive this. Margaret reached for him, but he stepped back, creating distance that felt like miles. I need you to leave, he said. This is my home. It's my home. David's composure finally shattered completely. It's in my name, bought with my inheritance, the inheritance you've been stealing. You don't get to pull that card anymore, Mom. You don't get to pretend you have any claim to anything. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. A hotel, a friend's house. Honestly, right now, I don't care. His voice cracked. You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy everything. Margaret felt panic rising in her chest. David, please, we can work this out. Get out. His voice was quiet now, final. Get out before I change my mind about calling the police. She opened her mouth to argue, to plead. But the look in his eyes stopped her. There was nothing left to say. No manipulation that would work. No lie convincing enough to undo the truth. Margaret gathered her purse with shaking hands and walked toward the door, each step feeling like a surrender. In the hallway, she paused, looking back at her son one last time. David had collapsed into the chair again, his head in his hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I'm sorry, Margaret whispered, but he didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge she'd spoken. She left, pulling the door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything. Outside, the afternoon sun was too bright, the manicured lawn too perfect. Margaret stood on the front steps of the house she'd lived in for 30 years and felt like a stranger. Her car keys were inside, her clothes, her entire life. All of it gone. Her phone buzzed. A text from her friend Diane. Heard some interesting rumors at the club today. Call me. Margaret deleted it without responding. The whispers had already started. By tomorrow, everyone would know. Her reputation, her social standing, Her carefully constructed image, all of it, would be ashes. She started walking, not sure where she was going, just knowing she couldn't stay. Behind her, the house loomed, beautiful and cold, a monument to a life that no longer belonged to her. And somewhere inside, her son was crying, grieving the mother he'd thought he knew. Margaret had played her hand and lost everything. The question now was whether there was anything left to salvage, or if she'd destroyed her relationship with David beyond repair. The answer, she feared, was already clear. Margaret made it 3 blocks before her legs gave out. She caught herself against a lamppost, her designer heels suddenly feeling like they weighed 1,000 pounds. Her phone buzzed again. Another text, another vulture circling. She didn't check it. A car slowed beside her, a black Mercedes. Familiar. The window rolled down, and Margaret's stomach dropped. "Get in." Claire's voice was flat, emotionless. "I don't think that's a good idea. Get in the car, Margaret. Unless you'd prefer to have this conversation on the street where your neighbors can watch." Margaret glanced around. Mrs. Patterson from 2 houses down was already peering through her curtains. She climbed into the passenger seat, hating the surrender of it. Claire drove in silence for several minutes, turning away from the neighborhood, heading toward the commercial district. Finally, she pulled into a coffee shop parking lot and killed the engine. "You're going to answer my questions," Claire said, "and you're going to tell me the truth for once in your miserable life." "I don't have to tell you anything." "The offshore accounts." Claire cut her off. "Gerald found 3 of them. 2 in the Caymans, 1 in Switzerland. There's another $800,000 missing that we can't trace." "Where is it?" Margaret's heart hammered. "I don't know what you're talking about." Claire's hand shot out, grabbing Margaret's wrist with surprising strength. "I am done playing games with you. David might be too weak to push this, but I'm not. You tell me where that money is, or I go to the FBI. Wire fraud across international borders? That's federal, Margaret. That's 20 years minimum. You're bluffing. Try me." Claire's eyes were steel. "I've already made copies of everything. Gerald has them. My sister has them. 1 phone call and your life is over." Margaret jerked her hand away, rubbing her wrist. "Why? Why do you care so much? You married into money. You got what you wanted. I married David because I love him." Claire's voice cracked with genuine pain. "Something you clearly can't comprehend. And I'm watching him fall apart because his mother, the woman who's supposed to protect him, decided to destroy him instead. I never meant to hurt David." "But you did!" Claire slammed her palm against the steering wheel. "You did hurt him. I found him on the bathroom floor an hour ago, crying so hard he couldn't breathe. My husband, the strongest man I know. Broken because of you." The image hit Margaret harder than she expected. "Is he?" "He's devastated." Claire's voice went quiet, dangerous. "And you know what the worst part is? He's defending you. Even now, after everything, he's making excuses for you. She had a gambling problem. She needed help. Like any of that justifies what you've done. What do you want from me?" "The truth. All of it. Where's the rest of the money?" Margaret stared out the window at the coffee shop, watching a young couple laugh over their drinks. When had life become so complicated? When had she crossed the line from struggling widow to criminal? "There is no more money," she said finally. Claire's head snapped toward her. "That's impossible. $800,000 doesn't just vanish. It does when you owe it to the wrong people." The words came out before Margaret could stop them. Silence fell like a guillotine. "What people?" Claire's voice was barely above a whisper. Margaret closed her eyes. This was it. The secret she'd buried so deep even she tried not to think about it. "Loan sharks, from Atlantic City. I got in over my head, kept trying to win it back, kept borrowing more. They gave me 3 months to pay them back or what? Or they'd come after David." Margaret's voice broke. "They know who he is, where he works. They showed me pictures of him leaving his office, getting coffee, walking to his car. They said if I didn't pay, they'd make sure he had an accident." Claire's face went white. "You put my husband in danger? You borrowed money from criminals and put a target on David's back." "I was trying to protect him. That's why I took the money from the trust. I was going to pay them off and then figure out how to replace it." "How much do you still owe them?" Margaret's hands twisted in her lap. 600,000. "Jesus Christ." Claire's head fell back against the seat. "Jesus Christ, Margaret. I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this." Claire's scream filled the car. "Sorry doesn't protect David from mobsters. Sorry doesn't undo the fact that you've endangered both our lives." I know. I didn't know what else to do." Claire's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her face changed. "It's David," she answered, her voice instantly shifting to something calmer. Hey, baby. Yeah, I'm okay. I just needed some air. Margaret watched Claire's expression shift as she listened to whatever David was saying. Concern flickered across her features, then something harder. I'm actually with her right now, Claire said. We're talking. No, David, don't, okay? Okay. 20 minutes. She ended the call and turned to Margaret. He wants us both to come back. Says he has something to tell us. What is it? He didn't say. Claire started the car. But he sounded strange. Off. The drive back felt endless. Margaret's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Had David called the police, changed his mind about pressing charges? Or worse, had something happened? Had the loan sharks made contact? Claire's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. If anything happens to him because of this, I will destroy you. I don't care if you're his mother. I will burn your entire world to the ground. I believe you. They pulled into the driveway to find David pacing on the front lawn, his phone pressed to his ear. He looked up as they approached, his face pale and strained. I understand, he said into the phone. Yes, tomorrow morning. I'll be there. He hung up and stared at both women, his expression unreadable. What's wrong? Claire moved toward him, but he held up a hand, stopping her. I just got off the phone with Dad's former business partner, Richard Chen. David's voice was hollow. He had some interesting information about the family finances. Margaret's blood ran cold. David, did you know Dad had a second life insurance policy? One that paid out directly to you, not to the estate? The world tilted. That's not. $750,000, Mom. Paid out 3 weeks after Dad died. Deposited into an account in your name only. David's voice rose with each word. You told me there was no life insurance. You said Dad left nothing but debts. You cried about how difficult things would be, how you'd have to struggle. Let me explain. You let me sell my car to help you with expenses. David's voice cracked. I gave you $20,000 from my savings because you said you couldn't afford the mortgage. And all along you had $750,000 sitting in a secret account? Claire grabbed Margaret's arm. You manipulated him even before the trust fund? This has been going on for years? It's not what you think. Then what is it? David moved closer, his hands shaking. What possible explanation could there be for lying about that money? For making me watch you struggle when you were sitting on a fortune? Margaret felt the last of her defenses crumbling. I was scared. After your father died, I panicked. I didn't know how to manage money, how to make it last, so I hid it. Told myself it was emergency funds, just in case. Just in case what? Just in case you needed it for Atlantic City? Claire's voice dripped with venom. How much is left? David asked quietly. Margaret couldn't look at him. 40,000. You spent $700,000 in 3 years. His voice was dead. On what? Living expenses. The house. My car. Gambling, Claire corrected. The credit card statements show it all. Casinos, cash advances, wire transfers to offshore betting sites. You gambled away your husband's life insurance while crying poverty to your son. David's phone rang again. He looked at the screen and his jaw tightened. It's Richard again, he answered, listening. His face went from pale to gray. When? Are you sure? Okay. Thank you for telling me. He lowered the phone slowly, his eyes finding Margaret's. Richard just got a call from someone asking questions about me, about my finances, my schedule, my security arrangements. David's voice was shaking. He said the man had an accent, Russian, maybe, and he knew details about Dad's company that weren't public. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. The loan sharks. What loan sharks? David looked between them, fear creeping into his eyes. What the hell is going on? Margaret felt everything spiraling out of control. David, I can handle this. Handle what? Mom, why would loan sharks be asking about me? Because she used you as collateral, Claire said, her voice hollow with horror. She borrowed money using you as leverage. The silence that followed was absolute. David stared at his mother, waiting for her to deny it. When she didn't, something broke in his expression. Not anger this time. Something worse. Resignation. Get out, he said softly. David, please. Get out of my house. Get out of my life. I don't care where you go or what happens to you. You're dead to me. You don't mean that. I mean every word. David's voice was eerily calm. I gave you every chance. I defended you to Claire. I was ready to help you, to get you treatment, to work through this. But you've been lying since before Dad died. You've put my life in danger. You're not sick, Mom. You're not an addict who needs help. You're just selfish and cruel, and I'm done." Margaret reached for him and he stepped back sharply. "Don't touch me. Don't call me. Don't ever contact me again. I'm your mother. You're nothing to me." The finality in his voice was crushing. "Claire's right. We're pressing charges. Gerald's filing the papers tomorrow. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what you are. David, the loan sharks, if you go public, then I'll deal with them. I'll hire security. I'll go to the police. Whatever it takes. But I will not let you use threats to control me anymore." Claire moved to stand beside her husband, their hands finding each other. A united front. Margaret stood alone on the lawn, watching her son choose his wife over her. "You'll regret this," Margaret said, hating how desperate she sounded. "The only thing I regret," David said, "is not seeing who you really were sooner." He turned and walked into the house, Claire following. The door closed behind them with a finality that echoed in Margaret's bones. She was alone, truly alone. Her son was gone, her money was gone, and somewhere out there, dangerous men were looking for her, expecting payment she couldn't provide. Margaret's phone buzzed one more time. An unknown number. She answered without thinking. "Mrs. Harrison." The voice was heavily accented, polite. "We need to talk about your debt. We'll be in touch very soon about collection." The line went dead. "Retry." Margaret's hands shook so violently she nearly dropped the phone. The calm, polite voice on the other end had been worse than any threat. Professional. Practiced. The voice of someone who'd done this before. She looked back at the house, at the warm light spilling from the windows. Inside, David and Claire were probably holding each other, relieved to be rid of her. They had no idea what was coming. Her phone rang again. Same unknown number. "Hello?" Her voice cracked. "You hung up on me, Mrs. Harrison. That's very rude." The accent was thicker now, the politeness edged with something dangerous. "My employer doesn't appreciate rudeness. I have the money. I just need more time." "Time?" A soft laugh. "You've had 3 months. The deadline was yesterday." Yesterday. God. Had it really been yesterday? The date had been circling in her mind for weeks, a noose tightening slowly. She'd convinced herself she'd have the money by then, that one more withdrawal from David's trust would solve everything. "I can get it. I just need a week." "No more weeks. My employer wants to meet. Tonight, 9 o'clock. The parking garage on 5th and Madison, level 3. Come alone. I can't possibly get that much cash by tonight." "Then bring what you have, and we'll discuss alternative payment arrangements." The line went dead. Alternative payment arrangements. Margaret's mind raced through the implications. They'd mentioned David, shown her pictures. If she couldn't pay, her phone buzzed with a text. A photo. David leaving his office building. Taken today. Recent. The timestamp showed 4:47 p.m. Less than an hour ago. Then another photo. Claire getting into her car. Then a third. Both of them together, walking into the house Margaret was now standing in front of. The message was clear. "We're watching. We can get to them anytime." Margaret's knees buckled. She sat down hard on the curb, her mind spiraling. 4 hours until the meeting. $40,000 in her account. 600,000 owed. The math was impossible. Another text. "We're patient people, Mrs. Harrison, but patience has limits. See you at 9. She needed help. But who? David had made his position clear. Claire would probably celebrate if Margaret got herself killed. Gerald Mitchum was bound by attorney-client privilege to David, not her. Her friends at the country club would scatter like cockroaches the moment scandal touched their circle. Margaret pulled up her contacts, scrolling through names that suddenly felt meaningless. Diane, Susan, Patricia. Women she'd had lunch with for years, shared gossip with, played tennis with. Would any of them loan her $600,000? Would any of them even answer her call once word spread? She stopped at a name she hadn't looked at in years. Robert Caldwell. Her late husband's former partner, the one who'd called David. He'd been at the funeral, had offered help if she ever needed it. A polite gesture, probably meaningless. But right now, meaningless gestures were all she had. The phone rang 4 times before he answered. "Margaret." Robert sounded surprised. "I wasn't expecting." "I need your help." The words tumbled out. "I'm in serious trouble and I don't know who else to call." A pause. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind that gets people killed." Another pause, longer this time. "Where are you?" 20 minutes later, Margaret sat across from Robert Caldwell in a chain restaurant off the highway, both of them looking out of place among the after-work crowd. Robert was older than she remembered. his hair more gray than brown now, but his eyes were still sharp. "Start from the beginning," he said. So she did. The gambling, the debts, the loan sharks, the threats against David. She left nothing out, too desperate for pride. When she finished, Robert sat back, his expression unreadable. 600,000, he said finally. "I know it's a lot. It's not the amount that concerns me." Robert's fingers drummed against the table. "It's who you owe it to. These people don't negotiate, Margaret. They don't do payment plans. You either pay or they hurt David." Margaret's voice broke. "I know. That's why I'm here. Robert, I need to borrow the money. I'll pay you back, I swear." "With what?" His voice wasn't unkind, just realistic. "You've blown through everything. Your husband's life insurance, David's inheritance, your own allowance. What do you have left to leverage?" "I don't know, but I can't let them hurt my son." "Your son who just disowned you?" Robert's eyebrow raised. "Who's pressing charges against you? How did you—" "Gerald called me. Wanted to know about your husband's estate, if there were any other hidden assets. I told him everything I knew." Robert leaned forward. "Margaret, I'm going to be honest with you. Even if I wanted to help, I don't have 600,000 in liquid cash to loan you. And even if I did, please." Margaret grabbed his hand across the table. "Please. I know I don't deserve your help. I know I've destroyed everything. But David doesn't deserve to suffer for my mistakes." Robert looked at their joined hands, then back at her face. Something shifted in his expression. "There might be a way," he said slowly. "But you're not going to like it. Anything. I'll do anything. Your husband had a partner in the business, me. When he died, you inherited his 50% share. It's still in your name." Margaret's heart jumped. "How much is it worth?" "Current market value? About 800,000. The number hung in the air like salvation. "Then I can sell it." "To who?" "Me." Robert's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm the only buyer who could move that fast. But Margaret, if you sell me your share, you lose your only source of income. The dividend checks you get quarterly? Gone. You'd have nothing. But David would be safe. David, who wants nothing to do with you." Robert squeezed her hand. "Think about this. Really think. You'd be trading your future for a son who's disowned you." Margaret pulled her hand back. "You don't understand. This is my fault. All of it. I did this. I can't let David pay the price for my stupidity." "Then you're willing to sell?" "Yes." Robert nodded slowly. "I'll need to make some calls. Get the paperwork drawn up. It'll take time. I have until 9 o'clock tonight." "That's impossible. Even expedited. We're talking days to properly transfer." "Then do it improperly." Margaret's voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. She lowered it. "Please, Robert, there has to be a way." He was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Finally, he pulled out his phone. "I know someone. A lawyer who specializes in rapid asset transfers. Not entirely legal, but not entirely illegal either. If I can get him to draw up an emergency contract, do it." Robert made the call, speaking in low tones Margaret couldn't quite hear. When he hung up, he looked tired. "He can have the papers ready by 7. But Margaret, this is a one-way door. Once you sign, you can't take it back. You'll have the cash, but you'll have nothing else." "I understand." "Do you?" Robert's gaze was penetrating. "Because I don't think you've thought this through. Where will you live? How will you survive? You're about to make yourself destitute to save a son who hates you." "He doesn't hate me. He's angry, hurt, but he doesn't." Margaret stopped. "It doesn't matter. He's my son. I protect him. That's what mothers do." "Even mothers who've spent the last 3 years destroying their children?" The words hit like a slap. Margaret flinched. "That's not fair." "Life isn't fair, Margaret. You taught me that when you fought me over your husband's estate, you wanted every penny you could get, legal or not. Now you're willing to give it all away." Robert shook his head. "I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to fix what I broke. Some things can't be fixed." Robert stood. "Come on. We have 2 hours to make this happen." They drove to the lawyer's office in silence. Margaret watched the city lights blur past, thinking about the choice she was making. Robert was right. David wanted nothing to do with her. Saving him wouldn't change that. She'd still be alone, broke, and facing criminal charges. But she'd be able to sleep at night knowing her son was safe. The lawyer, a thin man named Marcus with nervous energy and coffee breath, had the papers ready. Margaret read through them once, barely processing the legal jargon. "You're sure about this?" Marcus asked. "Once you sign, I'm sure." Her signature looked shaky on the page, her hand trembling. But it was done. $800,000, transferred to Robert in exchange for a wire transfer to her account. "It'll take 30 minutes for the funds to clear," Marcus said. "Maybe less." Margaret checked her phone. 7:43 p.m. She had just over an hour before the meeting. "I need to make a withdrawal," she told Robert. $600,000 in cash. "That's not possible. No bank keeps that much cash on hand, especially after hours." Margaret's stomach dropped. "But I know what you need." Robert pulled out his phone again. "Give me a minute." More calls, more hushed conversations. Margaret paced the small office, watching the clock tick toward her deadline. 7:52. 7:58. 8:04. Finally, Robert hung up. "My bank manager owes me a favor. He's opening a branch for us. We can get the cash, but we have to go now." They made it to the bank at 8:23. The manager, a balding man who looked irritated at being called in, counted out the money with agonizing slowness. $100 bills, stacked and bound, filling 2 large bags. $600,000, he said finally. "I hope you know what you're doing, Mrs. Harrison." Margaret didn't answer. She grabbed the bags heavier than she'd expected and headed for the door. "Wait." Robert caught her arm. "Let me come with you. These people are dangerous." They said come alone. "Margaret, if they see you, they might think I'm trying something. I can't risk it." She looked at him, really looked at him, seeing the concern in his eyes. When had anyone last looked at her with genuine concern? "Thank you, Robert, for everything. This doesn't make you a good person," he said quietly. "You know that, right?" "I know." She left him standing in the bank parking lot and drove toward 5th and Madison, the 2 bags of cash sitting in her passenger seat like ticking bombs. The parking garage loomed ahead, dark and forbidding. "Level 3, they'd said. Margaret's phone buzzed. A text from David. "Mom, someone just called the house asking for you." He had an accent. "Russian, what's going on?" Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. So many things she wanted to say. Apologies, explanations, confessions. Instead, she typed, "Everything's going to be okay. I love you." She deleted it before sending. The parking garage was nearly empty on level 3. Margaret pulled into a spot and killed the engine, her heart hammering. 8:54 p.m., 6 minutes early. A black SUV pulled up beside her, windows tinted. The back door opened. "Mrs. Harrison," the accented voice called. "So good of you to be punctual. Please, bring the bags and join me." Margaret grabbed the money and stepped out of her car, every instinct screaming at her to run. But she thought of David, of the photos they'd sent, and climbed into the SUV. The door closed behind her with a sound like a tomb sealing shut. The man sitting across from Margaret in the SUV wasn't what she'd expected. No scars, no visible weapons, just an expensive suit and a face that could belong to any corporate executive. He smiled as she settled into the seat, the bags of cash clutched against her chest. "You can put those down," he said, gesturing to the space between them. "I'm not going to rob you in my own vehicle." Margaret set the bags down with shaking hands. "I have the money, 600,000. Count it if you want." "Oh, I will." He unzipped one bag, rifling through the stacks with practiced efficiency. "But first, we should talk about the interest." Margaret's heart stopped. "Interest? 3 months overdue. Standard rate is 10% monthly, compounding." His smile never wavered. "That brings your total to about 800,000. That's not we never agreed to. It was in the contract you signed, Mrs. Harrison. Page 7, paragraph 3. Surely you read the terms before borrowing from us." She hadn't. She'd been desperate, reckless, and the men at the casino had made it seem so simple, just a signature, just a temporary loan, until her luck turned. "I don't have 800,000, Margaret whispered. "This is everything. Everything I have left in the world." The man's expression didn't change. "That's unfortunate. For you. Please, my son, he has nothing to do with this. Leave him alone." "Your son?" The man pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos. David at work, David at home. David kissing Claire goodbye that morning. Successful man, beautiful wife. Quite a lot to lose, wouldn't you say? "Don't hurt him. Please, I'm begging you." "I don't want to hurt anyone, Mrs. Harrison. I'm a businessman, but business requires payment in full." He leaned forward. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign over the deed to your house." "I don't own the house. It's in my son's name." His eyebrows raised. "Is it? Well, that is problematic." He thought for a moment. "Your car, then. What do you drive?" A BMW, 5 years old, maybe worth 30,000. We'll take it. And you'll work off the rest. Margaret's blood ran cold. Work off? We have various enterprises that could use someone with your social connections. Your country club friends, for instance. Wealthy women with poor security and trusting natures. His smile widened. I'm sure you could be quite useful in identifying opportunities. You want me to help you rob my friends? I want you to pay your debt. How you do that is up to you. Margaret felt bile rising in her throat. Everything she'd done, every choice she'd made, had led to this moment. Sitting in a car with a criminal, being recruited to betray the few relationships she had left. And if I refuse? The man's smile finally faded. Then we visit your son. Not to hurt him, you understand. Just to have a conversation about his mother's debts and how family obligations work in our culture. He paused. His wife is quite lovely, by the way. Claire, isn't it? I understand she's been trying to get pregnant. The threat was clear. Visceral. Margaret's hands clenched into fists. You stay away from them. They've done nothing. Neither did you, in the beginning. But here we are. The man gestured to the bags. 600,000 clears the principal. The BMW gives us another 30. That leaves 170,000 outstanding, plus accumulating interest. How long would I have to work for you? Until the debt is paid. Could be a year, could be 5, depends on how useful you prove to be. Margaret's mind raced through impossible options. She could go to the police, but these men knew where David lived. She could run, but they'd find her. She could. Her phone rang. David's name on the screen. Answer it, the man said. But choose your words carefully. Margaret's hand trembled as she accepted the call. Hello? Mom, where are you? David's voice was tight with fear. There's a car parked across the street. It's been there for an hour. Black sedan, tinted windows. I think they're watching the house. The man across from Margaret smiled, holding up his own phone. She could see the live feed, David's house, the front door, every window illuminated. I'm handling it, Margaret said, her voice cracking. David, listen to me. I need you to trust me one more time. Trust you? His laugh was bitter. After everything? I know I don't deserve it. But please, take Claire and leave the house. Go to a hotel. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Do it now. What's going on? Mom, are you in danger? The man held up 3 fingers, counting down. 2, 1. I love you, Margaret said. I'm sorry for everything. Take care of Claire. Be happy. She hung up before David could respond. Very touching, the man said. But unnecessary. We're not savages, Mrs. Harrison. We're simply business people who require payment. Then take the money and my car and we're done. Leave my son alone. I'm afraid it's not that simple. The SUV door suddenly flew open. Robert Caldwell stood there, his face grim, a phone in his hand recording everything. Actually, it is that simple. This conversation has been live-streamed to 3 different lawyers and the FBI field office downtown. Say hello to Federal Agent Morrison. A second figure appeared behind Robert, a woman in a windbreaker with FBI emblazoned across the chest. She had her weapon drawn. FBI, hands where I can see them. The man in the suit didn't move, his expression barely changing. You're making a mistake. The only mistake was you threatening witnesses on camera. Agent Morrison gestured for Margaret to exit the vehicle. Ma'am, please step out slowly. Margaret stumbled out, her legs barely supporting her. Robert caught her arm, steadying her. How did you? I called David after you left the bank. Told him everything. He contacted the FBI. Robert's voice was low. You're not as alone as you think, Margaret. 3 more FBI vehicles pulled into the garage, surrounding the SUV. Agents swarmed, pulling the man in the suit out, reading him his rights. He never stopped smiling, even as they cuffed him. This changes nothing, Mrs. Harrison, he called over his shoulder. There are others. The debt remains. Agent Morrison turned to Margaret. We've been tracking this organization for 2 years. Your cooperation could help us shut them down completely. What do you need from me? Everything. Names, dates, amounts, locations. Every interaction you've had with them. Margaret nodded numbly. And my son? Will he be safe? We'll put protection on your family until we've made all the arrests. Morrison's expression softened slightly. You did the right thing, coming here tonight. These people don't negotiate. They would have bled you dry and still hurt your son. A familiar car pulled up to the garage entrance. David's. He jumped out before it fully stopped, running toward Margaret. Claire was right behind him. Mom. David grabbed her shoulders, searching her face for injuries. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? Margaret couldn't speak. She just shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Why didn't you tell me? His voice broke. Why did you think you had to handle this alone? Because it's my fault. All of it. I couldn't let you pay for my mistakes. Claire stepped forward, her expression complicated. You sold your share of the company, Robert told us. You gave up everything to protect David. It doesn't fix what I did. It doesn't undo the damage. No, it doesn't. David's voice was firm. But it's a start. Agent Morrison cleared her throat. I hate to interrupt, but we need to get Mrs. Harrison's statement. This could take several hours. I'll stay with her, David said immediately. Margaret looked at her son, seeing something in his eyes she thought she'd lost forever. Not forgiveness that would take time, if it came at all. But maybe the beginning of understanding. You should go home, Margaret said. Take Claire somewhere safe. You don't need to. I'm staying. David's jaw set with familiar Harrison stubborn. We'll deal with the rest later. The charges, the money, all of it. But right now, you're not doing this alone. Claire took David's hand, nodding. He's right. We're staying. The next hours blurred together. Statements, photographs, documentation. Margaret told them everything, the casino connections, the loan terms, the threats, every detail she could remember. Her throat was raw by the time they finished. Dawn was breaking when Agent Morrison finally closed her notebook. That should be enough for now. We'll need follow-up interviews, but you can go home and rest. I don't have a home, Margaret said quietly. David owns the house. I have no legal right. You can stay in the guest room, David interrupted. Temporarily, until you figure things out. Margaret stared at him. After everything I've done, you'd let me stay? I'd let you stay. He held up a hand. But there are conditions. You get help. Real help. Gambling, addiction treatment, therapy, whatever it takes. And you're honest. About everything. No more secrets. No more lies. I don't deserve this. No, you don't. Claire's voice was hard. But David needs this. He needs to believe his mother can change. So don't make him regret giving you this chance. Margaret looked between them, her son and his wife, united in their cautious offer of grace. I'll do whatever it takes, I promise. Promises don't mean much from you right now, David said. But actions will. Show us you can change. They drove home in silence, the sun rising over the city. Margaret sat in the back seat, watching her son and daughter-in-law in the front, their hands intertwined. She'd lost so much: her money, her reputation, her independence. Criminal charges still loomed. Her friends would abandon her. The life she'd built was ashes. But David had stayed. Despite everything, he'd stayed. It wasn't redemption, it wasn't forgiveness. It was barely a beginning. But it was more than she deserved, and more than she'd dared hope for. 3 months later, Margaret stood in a community center basement, her hand raised. My name is Margaret, and I'm a gambling addict. The group murmured their welcome. She'd been coming for 60 days, white-knuckling through each meeting, fighting urges that sometimes left her shaking. The criminal charges had been reduced to restitution and probation, thanks to her cooperation with the FBI. She'd taken a job as a clerk in a bookstore, minimum wage and humbling. David and Claire had set boundaries, supervised visits, limited contact, earned trust. It was painful and necessary, and nothing like the relationship they'd had before. Because that relationship had been built on lies. This new one, fragile as it was, had a foundation of truth. Margaret would spend the rest of her life rebuilding what she'd destroyed. She might never fully succeed. But every day she chose honesty over manipulation, accountability over excuses. Was a day she became someone worthy of being called David's mother again. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but for the first time in years, Margaret Harrison was walking it with her eyes open and her conscience clear.